Is it Juan Soto or a bust for the New York Mets in free agency this offseason? We're going to talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, here we are. We are at the winter of Juan Soto. No player is going to be discussed more this offseason than the 26-year-old future Hall of Famer that just hit the open market. According to reports, as many as 12 teams have already reached out to express interest on Soto. We're actually going to talk a lot about the reports in the next segment because that starting figure that Scott Boras wants when it comes to a contract is a lot of money. Remember what Shohei Ohtani got? Well, they want that number, but even more in a lot of respects. We'll go through it in the second segment. But I want to start off here when it comes to Juan Soto and the fact that the New York Mets are rumored to be one of the top suitors for his services. This is a free agent that the New York Mets can't afford to miss on. And the reason I say that is because you're not going to get this opportunity again, or at least very rarely will you, because what we are seeing when it comes to the trends in the game these days, if you have a Juan Soto level talent that you develop in your farm system and you identify this guy has he is going to be a future Hall of Famer. He has that capability. He is going to be a perennial all-star and has the ability to maybe be the type of guy that can bring championships to our franchise, a guy that can one day not only have their jersey retired, maybe even have a statue outside the stadium. Like, if you have that lofty of an opinion of a player because they are just that good when they come up, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get a contract extension before you even get going. We've seen it time and again recently. Julio Rodriguez with the Mariners gets a monster deal with all these crazy different, clauses in the contract if he hits a certain, amount of stats, or maybe it's, I don't even know the exact figures, but I just know there's like vesting options that can turn that contract into something that I believe is north of $300 million. Bobby Witt Jr. gets a massive, massive deal with the Kansas City Royals. Corbin Carroll got a huge deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And what you look at Carroll and Julio Rodriguez, those guys struggled a little bit this year, where those contracts, you started to see the risk in them, but you are betting on talent and you're not going to wait, because if you wait, those guys are going to get close enough to free agency where they're going to let things play out. And so what we're seeing in the game now is if you have that level of a talent, you lock them up. What does that mean? Fewer and fewer of these players are hitting the market. Instead, you see the Pete Alonsos and the Alex Bregmans hitting the market. Really good players who have had great careers, but guys who hit the market at 30 years old. Still good players, but you really have to worry about the risk of a decline. Juan Soto turned 26 years old on game 1 of the World Series he just played in. And if you sign him to a 13, 14, 15-year contract, whatever it ends up being, the first 8 years of that deal, you are going to have an MVP caliber player. Look no further than in Philadelphia with Bryce Harper, because Juan Soto has pretty much mirrored Harper's career outside of the fact that he got traded twice before hitting free agency. But with Harper, debuted at 19 with the Nationals, played it all out with them, then hit the open market, got a 13-year, $330 million deal with the Phillies. Now, that contract has turned into a bargain. And that's the funny thing about the Soto deal. It's going to come back to you in some respects. Now, the fact that he might make upwards of $45 to $50 million a year, it feels more far-fetched. that the contracts will come back to you, but that is just the reality of a deal that's going to span more than a decade. When it comes to the end of this Juan Soto contract, he will not be the highest paid player in baseball because whoever's next will get more than Soto. But you look back at the Bryce Harper situation. Phillies end up signing him, and that was a drawn-out free agent process. Who knows if that'll happen with Soto, but he gets 13 years, $330 million. In his 6 years with the Phillies, Bryce Harper has hit 285. He's gotten on base at a 391 clip. He's slugged at a 533 clip. Those numbers, when you put them all together, an OPS over 900, that is perennial all-star stuff. He's won an MVP. He's won 2 Silver Sluggers. He took the Phillies to the World Series, and then he took them to Game 7 of the NLCS the following season. Last 3 years, he has taken the Phillies to the playoffs. 6 years before Bryce Harper got to Philly, they went 426 and 546 was their record. That was a 438 winning percentage. In the 6 years since, and yes, Harper has been a Philly for 6 years now, they have gone 463 and 407, 532 winning percentage. Only losing season was 2020, the COVID shortened year. And again, 3 straight years making the playoffs. He added 100 points to their winning percentage, essentially, in his tenure with the Phillies. That is how much of a difference maker a Bryce Harper can be, and for the Mets here, a Juan Soto can be. Let's not get it twisted. Juan Soto is the best hitter in baseball when it comes to getting on base. He has the best plate discipline in the game, and his combination of plate discipline and power is an anomaly. This guy has more walks than strikeouts in his career. Let that sink in. His walk rate is 18.8% for his career. Strikeout rate 17%. Career 285 hitter. Career 421 on-base percentage. Has never finished the season with an on-base percentage less than 400. So you sign him, the next 8 years, you're going to have someone batting somewhere in the top 3 of your lineup that'll get on base 40% of the time. It's pretty good to have. He's coming off a season where he hit 41 home runs, drove in 109, scored 128. That's a big thank you to Aaron Judge on all those runs scored. Hit 288, 419 on base, 569 slug. We talk about weighted runs created plus on this show a lot. Stat that measures hitters on a league average of 100. 180 WRC plus means he was 80% better than your league average hitter. And in the playoffs, he did not fade. He hit 327. He got on base at a 469 clip, slugged at a 633 clip, and hit the home run that got the Yankees into the World Series. And by the way, he was unbelievable playing in the World Series when he was 20 years old with the Nationals and won a title all the way back in 2019 when he was just getting started in his first complete full season. Had a really good rookie year the year prior to that when he was teammates with Bryce Harper. They let Harper walk. Soto filled those shoes, and they won a World Series right away. This guy will be a Hall of Famer. He will be, unless injuries, but very good chance you're talking about a future Hall of Famer. If the New York Mets sign Juan Soto, he will go down as the greatest player in franchise history. And that's maybe taking a shot towards Lindor. I don't mean it to be, because Francisco Lindor right now, I believe, is trending towards being the greatest player in franchise history. But you're talking about 2 guys that can come together and do a lot of special things for the New York Mets. This is an opportunity that Steve Cohen cannot let pass him by. If there was ever a free agent to be the highest bidder on, it's Juan Soto. And if you listen to what Juan Soto said after the World Series, he made it very, very clear. Loved his year with the Yankees. Loved it. Great time, great guys, great clubhouse, great fans. Made it to the end. Whole deal. He's not partial to going back to the Yankees. If the dollars were exactly equal, would he choose the Yankees over the Mets? Maybe. But if the dollars are more from the Mets or any other team, Juan Soto basically let it be known, hey, all 30 teams got a shot at me. The reality, probably only 5 or 6 really do that can actually afford him. But he all but said it. I will go with whatever team pays me the most. He also said he wants to win, but I don't think that he's going to sign with a team where there's no shot to win. I don't think there is the Seattle Mariners Robinson Cano offer coming. This guy is going to have a short list of suitors. It might just be the same teams that were in on Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Mets, Dodgers, Yankees. And man, if he signs with the Dodgers, the whole sport is screwed. I really hope that doesn't happen. If this comes down to the Mets and the Yankees, seems like all the Mets have to do is put the best offer in front of them. The question is, how prohibitive is that offer? How crazy will the bidding war get on Juan Soto? That's what I want to talk about next, because Scott Boras already showed his hand in the media. So we're going to go through that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And again, you throw that $5 bet on something you know that's going to hit. Let's just say you're looking at the Knicks. They're taking on the Pistons. You believe they're going to get a huge win. Throw $5 on the money line, and you are going to win $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started. $150 bonus bets. You win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We got a new lofty goal. I'd love to get to 15,000 subscribers by opening day. That's going to take a lot, so I appreciate all of you who continue to hit that red button and subscribe. All right, let's talk about the market for Juan Soto, because Scott Boras' mouthpiece has spoken. Jon Heyman, longtime mouthpiece of Boras, when he writes about a Scott Boras free agent, you best believe that messaging came from Boras' lips to Heyman's ears, to his fingers, and into the New York Post. Juan Soto on a historic $700 million MLB free agency contract. That was the story that Heyman published in the Post. Top free agent Juan Soto. This is read directly from the article. Top free agent Juan Soto's new magic number is thought to be, wonder how you figured that one out, $700 million or more, in parentheses. Now, and that's a solid $700 million, not the record $700 million. That's 97% deferred that Japanese superstar Shohei Ohtani received from the Dodgers. Word is that within 2 hours of the Yankees losing the World Series to Ohtani's Dodgers in their Game 5 debacle, 8 rival teams checked in with interest. And by Thursday morning, the number was up to 11. And while teams are disallowed from talking dollars for days, $700 million is the number floating around even before his free agency can begin. Is it really, John? Is it? I wonder how you heard that. Soto was said to enjoy his year with the Yankees, in parentheses, even if he was less than effusive after Game 5. And the Yankees could see him as a quote-unquote great guy, not just an all-time great player. But even they assume the contract/money will be the first priority, in parentheses, along with winning, when he decides where to play the next 13-plus years. Then in parentheses again, the Yankees seem resigned to go 13, but with him aiming to play into his 40s, 14 might actually be the minimum he's looking for. To get $700 million for 14 years, he would become baseball's first non-deferred $50 million a year player. Okay. Lots of process there. So when these meetings start, if a team asks, hey, Scott, what's the number you're looking for? Well, Shohei Ohtani got $700 million. We would like $700 million. Okay, can we defer that like Ohtani? Because the present day money value on Shohei Ohtani's contract is around $460 million. So you're going to have a little wiggle room there? No. That's $700 million straight up. And you wonder, why wouldn't they do deferred money? Maybe they get $800 million, but a bunch of deferred money, set a new record, set a huge, gaudy number. Shohei Ohtani is a unicorn in many ways. His endorsements off the field allowed him to take deferred money because he's probably making about that contract, per year, just in endorsements. Who knows? He might be making $100 million in endorsements. The guy is the most marketable player in baseball right now. Juan Soto is great. He's not in commercials like Shohei Ohtani. So Ohtani had that on his side. Also, Shohei Ohtani wasn't represented by Scott Boras. And here's the thing about deferred payments. You don't actually collect as the agent until those deferred payments are, paid. So you have Juan Soto, and if he's not going to get paid a majority of his contract until the year 2045, Scott Boras probably won't like that contract. Now, let's talk about those numbers. $700 million, 14 years, $50 million a season. Do I think he's going to get that? No, I don't. I don't think there's a team that's going to commit to paying a player $50 million when they turn 39 years old. I just don't believe that's going to happen. The crazy thing is, if you sign him to a 14-year deal, you actually don't even end up with a contract into his 40s. You look at Trey Turner, you look at Xander Bogaerts, those are guys that sign contracts that will pay them into their 40s because they hit free agency in their late 20s, or I think for Bogaerts, he was already in his 30s, early 30s. He might have been 30, but I think he got an 11-year deal at 30 years old. Point being, years could get crazy for Juan Soto to get a crazy number. So right now, you're saying, 14 years is the minimum. Is there a team that says, you know what, we'll give him 16 years so that you can pay him instead of $47 million, which would be more than Ohtani? We're going to pay him $42 million, but we're going to give him a 16-year deal. Let's get the old calculator out, see how much that comes out to. 16 times 42, $672 million. Doesn't quite get to 700. 700 divided by 16 is what? 43.75. There you go. So maybe that is a team that wants to pay him less than $45 million per, so it gets that crazy. I don't think the Mets should give this guy a 16-year deal, but a 14-year deal, I don't know if that's crazy. 13-year deal is ideal. That's what Bryce Harper got. Let's say one of the check marks or the boxes that Boras and Soto want to check is being the highest paid player when it comes to average annual value. And again, Shohei Ohtani, $70 million a year, quote unquote, 68 of that is deferred. So really, you're looking at a player whose average annual value when it comes to present day value, which again, because there's money deferred, money later does not cost as much as money now, so to speak, how they view these things. For average annual value, Shohei Ohtani's contract is worth $46 million in change when it comes to the luxury tax. So let's say that's the number they want to top. $47 million per year. Here's my first prediction. $47 million per year, 13 years. That gets you to $611 million. Maybe that's the number the Mets want to settle in at. Maybe it's 15 years, $40 million per. That's $600 million. All of a sudden, maybe that's a little more affordable. $40 million a season. Not bad. That's what Aaron Judge is making. It's going to get crazy. The bidding is going to get insane for Juan Soto because he can get a contract that's going to start at 13 years. And according to John Heyman, the minimum that he's looking for is 14 years. Because you know what? Bryce Harper, he might have baseball left to play when his contract with the Phillies is up because he'll be 38 years old. So, same exact situation here. You do the math. If he's 26 years, 26 years old now, 26, 27, 28, that's his first 3 years. So yeah, if you sign to a 14-year deal, you're looking at, paying for age 26 through age 39 and getting him to 40 years old. I know that that's crazy. I know that that sounds like too much money in too many years, but if you're getting that first 10 years where Juan Soto could be an all-star every single year, and again, you look at the first 6 years of Bryce Harper, he's still playing at an all-star level. He might not be an MVP anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if he still won another one, but he might be a step below that. He still has at least 3 or 4 really good years in him, and that will take him through the first 10 years of his deal. So do I believe Juan Soto can be effective for 10 years of a 14-year deal? Absolutely. Final 4 years, what will it look like? Well, you worry about that when you get there. If you get a decade of Juan Soto being amazing, paired with a shortstop that you have in Francisco Lindor that just proved he can play at an MVP level still and could be the best shortstop in baseball still this year. Bobby Witt was better, but on that level, right? All of that is to say, there is no world where the New York Mets cannot afford whatever this race ends up, going towards. They can afford Juan Soto. They have Steve Cohen. The question is, will this offseason be a bust if they don't sign Juan Soto? And if they do, how do you build around him long term? We're going to talk about those things in the next segment. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Let's say you got nothing to do this weekend. You pull open the Game Time app, and you can find this weekend. It's a tab right there, and it'll show you stuff in your area. I live in Florida, so if I wanted to, I could go to South Florida versus Florida Atlantic. That's my alma mater. If I wanted to catch a football game for $14, I could scroll through here. Christina Pazinski, a comedian, is playing not that far from me. I can get a ticket to that. You can get it. There's a concert playing. The Fix is playing somewhere around me. In New York City, I'm sure you guys have way more that will be at your fingertips on the Game Time app. And the best part, Game Time will filter out the fluff with Game Time picks and give you just the best possible deals. So you're looking at the seat map. You might see thousands of tickets. It's a little bit jarring. You use the Game Time picks feature that'll filter out the fluff and just show you the best possible deals. When you download the Game Time app today, you create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks from the Mets. So today, when the Mets made their first signing of the offseason, Dylan Covey, that's a major league deal for a relief pitcher. I wouldn't concern yourself with it too much. I still haven't seen the terms of this deal. I believe it's probably a split contract. At least that's my early read on it, because we saw last year, it was reported, the Mets signed Austin Adams to a major league deal. Ended up being a split contract. What that means is you have the option to put the guy in the minor leagues, but there's also that sort of acknowledgement that if they have a major league offer by the end of spring training, you send them off to play for another team. But the bottom line, they signed a guy that could factor into their bullpen, somebody who had a lot of success in AAA this past year, had an injury, came back. He was in the Phillies system and didn't give up a lot of runs. He gave up a home run to the first guy he saw in AAA. Didn't give up a run after that. Struck out 27.5% of the batters that he faced. So, guy the Mets clearly like. First people that knew about it was the Locked On Mets insiders. They got a text message where I gave them my initial take on the deal. I hope I sent that text. I was actually sitting at the dentist's office. I think I said it before the dentist came out and get me. Now I feel bad. If the insiders didn't get it, I apologize. I'll make sure I'll be on top of the rest of the news throughout the offseason. And if you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's sort of close this first discussion on Juan Soto and if it is Juan Soto or bust. The reality to me, again, is that you aren't going to get this opportunity again for a very long time. Next year, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be a free agent, probably the top of the market. Bo Bichette as well. Are either of those guys on the level of Juan Soto? No. If you want to sign Vladdy, you might as well just sign Pete Alonso this offseason. If the Mets don't sign Juan Soto and they do sign Pete Alonso and they sign Corbin Burns and they build up the rotation, would it be a bust of an offseason? Probably not. But they're going to have to do a lot in free agency, no matter what they do, whether it's Soto, Alonso, or anyone else. They have to really add a ton of pitching. And if you lose Pete Alonso, you're going to have to make up for what has been largely 40 home runs, 100 RBIs in your lineup every single season. Funny thing is, Juan Soto hasn't had a lot of seasons like that when it comes to the offensive production. As far as 40 and 100, this is the first year he ever did that. But you'll take the guy that is hitting over 280, getting on base over 400 clip, hitting 30 home runs and driving in 90. That's a lot more valuable still than what Pete Alonso has done. Question is, how do you build around Juan Soto? Is there concerns about signing Soto to a contract that could be $46 million per year, right? That was the number that Shohei Ohtani got. Let's even say $47 million per year. If you get $1 million more on the average annual value when it comes to the luxury tax. Francisco Lindor's average annual value is, I believe, $33.8. It's a little bit less than the $34.1 million that he really gets per year over the 10-year deal, but there was some deferred money in that takes it down a bit. Let's just round them both off and say the two of those players, it's going to be $80 million, right? You still have 6 years of Brandon Nimmo left. And by the way, you still have 7 years of Francisco Lindor left. So 6 years of Nimmo at $20.25 million. So over the next 6 years, if you sign Soto for more than Ohtani per year, you have Lindor and Nimmo on the books. Those three players are going to cost you $100 million. It's a little bit more than that, $100.5 million. If Steve Cohen's cool to have a $300 million payroll, who cares? You still have $200 million to build out the rest of your team. Yes, you got Edwin Diaz and Kodai Senga for the next couple of years. You got one more year of Marte, then he comes off the books. You have 2 more years of Jeff McNeil, I believe, before he comes off the books. Regardless, the Mets can afford Juan Soto. And if you look at the other team on the other coast that just won the World Series, how they've built out their core. Shohei Ohtani, $46 million per year as far as average annual value for the luxury tax. Mookie Betts, $30.4. Tyler Glasnow, $27.3. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, $27. Freddie Freeman, $27. Those 5 guys, their top 5 highest paid players, run them $157 million. So for 2025, it's $100.5 million. Then you got Diaz and Senga, or Diaz and Marte are probably the other 2 highest paid playing guys. You're looking at 138 now, or just round it off to 140. Let's say the Mets need to sign that ace pitcher that's going to cost them $25 million too. All right, well, now you're getting a little bit more than the Dodgers, but still, it's Steve Cohen. You can make this work where you can sign Juan Soto, still get the pitching you need. You might not want to sign Corbin Burnes to an 8-year deal if you got Soto on the books and Lindor and Nimmo. But can you find the pitcher in free agency, whether it's Sean Manaea or Blake Snell or Max Fried or whoever it is that might get less years, where it's only a 3-year deal instead of an 8-year deal? You can still find that. Can you go out there? Can you trade for Sonny Gray or Luis Castillo or Pablo Lopez, some of these high-priced pitchers that are more expensive for other teams than they would be for the Mets? Yes. You can figure all of these things out. That's what David Stearns is there for, to figure out these tough conversations, to figure out these tough decisions. Here's the question for me. If the Mets sign Juan Soto, does that mean Pete Alonso is definitely gone? My assumption would be yes, but here's what I'll say. It shouldn't necessarily preclude the Mets from signing Alonso because it is Steve Cohen. And if Pete Alonso's market comes down, and let's just say it's less than $25 million per, and you can get him for 5 years, even 6 years, even you line him up with the Nimmo contract. If it's 6 for 150 even, which would be $25 million per. For 6 years, your core is Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso. About $125 million for those 4 players. You can still build around that. You'd still have on the cheap Francisco Alvarez and Mark Vientos for at least a couple more seasons before they hit arbitration. You can figure things out. Let's just say they did that, and they're trying to go up against the Dodgers next year. You go into the season with Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Mark Vientos, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo as your top 5 in the lineup. I don't know if anyone has a better top 5 in baseball. You then go beyond that. Maybe you bring back Jesse Winker on a reasonable deal. Maybe you have a Marte Winker DH platoon, Alvarez, Jeff McNeil, Tyrone Taylor for opening day, but you hope at some point you get a Jet Williams or a Drew Gilbert or a Luis Angel Acuna starting in center field instead of a Tyrone Taylor. It's a pretty darn good team. Now, let's be more realistic. You sign Juan Soto, you let Pete Alonso walk because you don't need to commit to $25 million a year for Pete Alonso or even $20 million a year for Pete Alonso when you can move Mark Vientos over to first base. And maybe the front office really still believes in Brett Beatty. They think Brett Beatty could be your starting third baseman because you got Juan Soto. You replaced Alonso's production. You actually upgraded on it. And a full year of Mark Vientos is going to be a big boost to the team. Again, maybe you get a Jesse Winker. Maybe there's somebody else out there that you get that can play a little bit of outfield and can DH for you, whatever it is, right? Okay. You look at where you'd be at. What would you have to do? Where would be the position you have to shore up? Third base would become a big question mark. So you're relying on Brett Baty, and we've already talked about it a little bit. Not a ton on the market to sign this offseason. Your best bet would probably be to just re-sign Jose Iglesias to set up a platoon at third base with Brett Baty, where Iglesias would hit against lefties potentially, and you'd have Baty. You have Ronnie Mauricio as an alternative, but he hasn't resumed baseball activities coming off the torn ACL. I'm just not going to count on him for much of anything until we see him on a baseball field again. I don't think that's a crazy take to say, I don't know if this guy's going to be a huge contributor when he hasn't done any baseball activities and we're in November and he's got to figure that whole thing out. He hasn't seen pitching in a calendar year. I guess maybe the Dominican Winter League was in December, but by the time he sees live pitching, it'll probably be a full year. So we'll see about Mauricio. He is an option. You could always try Luisangel Acuna at third, too. You see the way Iglesias handled third base. You've seen Louis Guillorme handle third base. As a shortstop, Acuna could play third base. Going to be a really short third baseman, but he can play third base, potentially. If the Mets sign Juan Soto, you don't have to expend much else on your position player group. You can spackle it together. You can find, maybe there's a third baseman I'm not thinking about that's on a team that you can trade for, that can come in, and maybe that third baseman's more established than Brett Baty, obviously, that can play that position for you and at a fraction of the cost of the free agents that are out there. They're going to be too much, like a Bregman. There's really the only one, unless you want to move Willy Adames to third base, and I don't see that happening. So bottom line, to me, this offseason is Juan Soto or bust. It really is. Because this is your chance to get a player that's better than Francisco Lindor. And that's not a knock on Lindor. It's really not. Francisco Lindor this year was good enough to win a championship. 100%. But wouldn't it be better if you had a hitter in your lineup that was better than Lindor that could take you there? The reality is, for the Mets, Francisco Lindor's value is tied to his offense and his defense. If he anchors your defense, Juan Soto anchors your offense, I don't really care who else you're spending money on. I trust that David Stearns can build a championship team around that year in, year out for the next 7 seasons. And if you got to get a little bit cheaper at third base and move Vientos to first because you have Juan freaking Soto, you figure it out, and guess what? Maybe Brett Baty does show up next year and he's ready to play. Maybe he's not an all-star hitter, but what if he is a really good defensive third baseman that can post a 740 OPS, and you got Vientos on the other side that hits 40 bombs for you, and maybe he's an upgrade over Pete defensively at first, and you got Juan Soto in the middle of that lineup. The one last thing I'll say, and look, we'll have a lot of time to talk about it, the defensive fit will be a little bit tricky because Juan Soto is probably better suited to be a left fielder than a right fielder just because it's a less taxing position. And having Brandon Nimmo in left and Juan Soto in right, your outfield defense is not going to be as good as it was for large portions of this year. Now, is Soto an upgrade over Strong Marte defensively? Probably, just based on age. But don't let the Gold Glove nominations fool you. This guy's not good defensively. Long-term, he might be a DH, or long-term, you never know, he might foul the Bryce Harper route and end up in the infield playing first base. But you can't deny the bat. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Steve Cohen as the owner of the New York Mets to flex his financial muscle and get the best player available. Go out and get him. He's there for the taking. He's going to the highest bidder. Be the highest bidder. Get Juan Soto this offseason. And everything else could fall into place. And but that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Likely the last show for this week of Locked On Mets, unless we get some big breaking news or something else that needs to be covered. And then, of course, I always am going to hop on and give you those bonus shows throughout the offseason if something noteworthy happens. So make sure that you're subscribed if you're watching on YouTube so you don't miss anything. If you are listening, make sure you are following wherever you get your podcasts. It also helps if you rate and review the show. Follow me on Twitter or X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel. Covers everything in the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports Today. The local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league, and Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.